Well, good morning and welcome to the fall meeting of the Academic Course Guide Manual Advisory Committee. I'd like to welcome current members and guests today. The second item on our agenda is the introduction of new members. On my right is Dr. Wally Ngadayu, and also on my right is Dr. Bill Fleming. Additionally, on my right is Miss Suzanne Gann. On my left, returning after a one-year term for a three-year term, is Dr. Gary Don Harkey. All right. We also have Mr. John Jackson, who's at the front table, and we have Dr. Celia Williamson also at the front table. So welcome to the committee. Our third item of business this morning is to consideration of the minutes from the March 24th meeting. You have them in your packet, and they're labeled Agenda Item 3. And while we're talking about the packet, is Miss Leslie and her staff have put together a packet that each section that's stapled is by agenda item so that you can follow along with the agenda. And if you don't have an agenda packet, they're on the table here to the right of me in the back. Feel free to pick one up. All right. I guess while you're looking at the minutes, some additional announcements I can make. If you haven't given your money for lunch to Miss Byram, please do so. We also have an attendance roster for you to sign on the second gray table here in the front. If you haven't signed, please do so before you leave today on the roster. And then the microphones. It's push the button to talk and then push the button to silence your mic. And so back to the minutes.
This is a picky point, but my last name is Hanson, and it's just misspelled in the minutes.
We'll get that corrected. Well, if you look at page 23 of the large packet that's after Agenda Item 3, which is part of the minutes, there were some tables at the bottom of page 23 that have some asterisks that were to explain notes from work that was done at the spring meeting. And the three asterisks column on page 23 are marked with three asterisks about the approved field of studies. Those are some changes that came from the subcommittees after the spring meeting occurred. And those changes were recommended by chairs of the technically what we called work groups from the spring meeting, and they were accepted both by myself and Sharon Blackman, the other co-chair of the committee at the time, and then those went forward to the June cause meeting. That's the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. So in case anybody has any questions about that item on page 23. I'd be happy to entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the March 24th meeting as read and will be corrected for the misspelling of the name. Any further discussion? All in favor? Raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Minutes are approved as read with corrections. Agenda item 4 is the election of a new co-chair. Sharon Blackman, her term expired August of 2014, so we need to elect a co-chair. This co-chair is for the two-year colleges in the state, and I'm willing to entertain a motion to open up the floor for nominations. It's just to get the nominations open. We haven't nominated anybody yet.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And just to keep it formal, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? No abstentions? Okay. So we're formally opened for nominations. Edgar Garza? Okay. We've got Edgar Garza. Any additional nominations? No. No. Well, I guess by acclamation, Edgar Garza will serve as the two-year college co-chair to the Academic Course Guide Manual Advisory Committee, effective immediately. So if you would like to move over here to the right, you're welcome to, but if you'd like to stay where you're at, that's fine too.
I'll stay comfortable here.
Okay. All right. So didn't really have any things there. So the next item of business is agenda item 5 on developmental education, and we have Dr. Suzanne Morales Vale here with us today, formerly from the P16 division that has a new name now, but you'll probably remember her as being P16. So I'd like to turn the floor over to Dr. Morales Vale.
Yes, thank you very much. And, our division is called now College Readiness and Success. So I just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about the reasoning for this request. The coordinating board and institutions of higher education, since minimally at 2008, with the approval of the college and career readiness standards, have been engaged in multiple reform efforts with the main goal to improve the persistence and success of underprepared students. Our statewide developmental education plan, which is available on our website, and our recently approved Rider 44 report, which is a legislatively mandated report updating the efforts of developmental education, both talk very extensively about a number of reform efforts, including the integration of reading and writing. We know the purpose of developmental education is first and foremost to prepare students for successful engagement in academic coursework. And we know the first entry-level courses include English 1301 and other courses such as history, government, psychology. And there are no standalone reading courses once students get into the college-level coursework. All actions and engagement by students involve addressing reading and writing in an integrated manner. However, before this reform effort was launched, students never had an opportunity to practice and get authentic feedback when they engage in both areas simultaneously. So if we are to prepare students most efficiently and effectively, we should provide them with opportunity for practice and feedback as students engage in both reading and writing in an integrated manner, and it's also reflective of the expectations of all college-level coursework. So what we would like to propose is to make the definitions more clear in the Acgm when it comes to the reading, developmental writing, and the developmental integrated reading and writing. And by the way, these are both for coursework and the interventions, the NCBO, the non-course competency-based interventions, so that the integrated reading and writing must be, or the reading and writing courses must be integrated at the upper level or exit level only, and that any lower levels can be either integrated or can remain standalone at the option of the institution. And when we talk to institutions, we ask them to consider, the types of students that come in to best meet their needs. And so some institutions like San Jacinto, Lone Star Montgomery, we understand have elected to go almost 100% integrated reading and writing at all levels, while other institutions have also selected to keep the lower level separate. Just a couple of data points from 2011 to 2012, we had approximately 2,000 enrollments in integrated reading and writing. This past fall, that enrollment has shot up to over 8,000. So we know that our institutions are actively engaged in this coursework with their students. And also, November 18th is a webinar, our last engagement of professional development, a concerted professional development that we have provided free of charge to institutions of higher ed for the last 2 years. We partnered with Cengage Team Up, a peer faculty learning professional development effort that has been going on for 2 years. We've had over 1,000 faculty and support staff members participate. We provided these workshops on a regional basis, and we've had wonderful feedback from these interventions, and also most of them are even recorded and provided online at our website. So that concerted professional development program will end fairly shortly, but of course we will continue to monitor and meet any professional development needs as best we can as requested by institutions to further support this intervention.
Thank you. Agenda item 5 in your packet has the definitions that Dr. Morales-Vail is referring to. These definitions do need to be considered by the committee today, and
I have a question about the integrated reading and writing definitions. If I'm reading them correctly, it says that the course fulfills TSI requirements for reading and writing for all integrated reading and writing, whether the NCBO or the courses. If that's true, and the lower levels can be taught by an integrated methodology, then they would fulfill TSI requirement, and that's not true. Am I reading it incorrectly?
Yes, anytime the course is offered in an integrated fashion, it meets both the reading and writing requirements. Successful completion would meet the requirements.
But the lower level course doesn't.
The lower level course remains standalone,
Yeah.
then yes, it does not. So if it's a standalone lower level developmental reading course, and then of course it also depends on a number of other factors when an institution looks at a student holistically, that lower level course may or may not at the institution fulfill TSI requirements. So if the student successfully completes a standalone, then they would check the box for that subject area only.
This is clarification for me, and I think I understand what Michael is alluding to. So if you have integrated reading and writing, and it's for helping students at the lowest level, and they pass that one integrated reading and writing, they won't move to the next level?
Hello, that's completely institutional specific. We do not dictate to institutions whether they have one level or multiple levels. But if generally speaking, it is a level, the lower level of an integrated writing and course, they generally address the same outcomes, but maybe not at the same level of detail, or perhaps maybe not at the, they have various ways to address them. And so if there are multiple levels of integrated reading and writing, the institution may or may not decide, depending on the outcome and depending on how they assess the student, that either level would suffice to meet TSI. Because remember, we no longer require at the end of a successful completion of a developmental ed course that the student retest on an assessment instrument, on the TSIA, for example.
So if they completed successfully the lowest level of an integrated reading and writing course, according to this definition, it says this course fulfills the TSI requirements for reading and writing. Do we need some clarification in there that it would be only this course fulfills TSI requirement for reading and writing at the highest level? If they successfully complete at the upper level? Do we need to add that?
Well, we certainly could consider that, but so far we have no language in the Acgm with developmental education with regards to levels. So even if you have currently in current practice, if you have 2 developmental ed courses in reading, for example, we don't necessarily say to the institution that the student must pass both levels in order to be TSI complete. We leave that up to the institution.
I see it as problematic, and I don't know what kind of clarification we need, but I feel like that maybe further study is needed.
If I'm understanding it correctly, when you have the developmental reading and you have the developmental writing, it says, it does mention the level, and it says for institutions offering more than one level, this course shall be used for lower levels only. So could you mention levels in the integrated is what I think they're...
So yes, if you would feel comfortable to say if the institution has chosen to use the integrated format for multiple levels, then only the highest level would fulfill TSI. What we meant when we added the language to say it fulfills both reading and writing is we wanted to clarify that the integrated reading and writing meets both, not just one or the other. But we didn't necessarily want to go into the levels issue because we have always traditionally left that up to the institution. But we certainly could consider language to make that clear.
To me, the confusion is with the word level, because upper level to us means upper level courses and lower level courses, but that's not what it's referring to here. These are just levels within the TSI parameters, right?
Developmental ed.
Yeah, since this is only talking about developmental education courses, we're not talking about credit bearing, college credit bearing.
So maybe the language needs to be changed in that way, credit bearing and non-credit bearing, so that we're not using, I mean...
Well, all developmental coursework is not credit bearing in the sense that it does not count towards a degree.
Yes, and that's how we use it. But what I'm saying is that there's the confusion with using upper level, and because that means something different. When we say upper level in most schools, we're thinking 3,000 or 4,000 level courses. We're not thinking in the way that you're using it. Do you understand what I mean?
Certainly, we can add the words upper level developmental education coursework. Would that clarify that we're not talking about upper level college credit courses?
It's the word level.
It's the word level. Okay, well,
But it, it depends on what scenario you're in. I mean, everything has levels. To you, 3,000 and 4,000 is upper level. From a community college standpoint, 2,000 is upper level. So I think most people are going to understand it because it's within the context.
and when we considered this language, certainly we consulted with the field, and that's why we even added, I believe it should be in there, that we also added in parentheses highest level, because again, it's in the context of developmental ed coursework, not in the context of all general Acgm coursework.
I have a suggestion that if you had the sentence, actually I've got two. One of them could be, is you could say this course, if taught at the exit level, now it still has the word level, fulfills TSI requirements. Or what you could do in the note is where you have the and may be used for lower levels, if you struck that, the note would just say institutions offering one or more levels, this course shall be used for the upper exit level. That may clarify.
Can I mention one other comment? I mean, if your intent is to clarify that the TSA requirements for both reading and writing are met for the course, then you need to strike the word or. It needs to say for reading and writing. Otherwise, you still have the same ambiguity if that was the intent. And I do agree with Andrew that if you just add the phrase, if taught at the exit level, then it's meet TSI requirements.
The reason why we said and or is because a student may only be, may be college ready in writing, for example, but not in reading, and the, diagnostic and other information may indicate that this upper level course, the exit level course, would be appropriate. So since they've already TSI met the standard in writing, in that case, for that student, they would check the box for reading. But for students who would need both, in that case, this course would meet both. Didn't want to imply that this course is only for students who are TSI liable in both areas.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Wallace, if I just wanted to clarify, so you had suggested successful completion of this course taught at the upper exit level would fulfill TSI requirements in both reading and writing.
Yes.
Okay, certainly we could include that.
And I would be willing to entertain a motion to add that language to the integrated reading and writing where it's at in the definition, and also to add it to the definition for the non-course based
I'll make
option.
that motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consideration for the proposed revisions as amended on reading, writing, and integrated reading and writing developmental education descriptions. Any further discussion? Well, hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, on to agenda item 6 on the 2014 Learning Outcomes Project. We have several members and guests here today that will be speaking to these disciplines. I would recommend that we look at each discipline as a single group and not go individual courses to save time today. We can consider education and TICA as a common group, but the others we do need to consider as individual disciplines. Yeah, and I'm going to turn it over now to Rebecca to give you some background on the project.
Okay, this is in your packet, agenda item 6 is your packet of course descriptions and learning outcomes that were developed through the spring and summer of this year for selected disciplines. The disciplines this year were agriculture, biology, communication, teacher education, which would be the EDUC, and the early childhood education, the TECA, and geography and physical education. Faculty work groups were, nominations were solicited, and they came to the coordinating board and met and worked on these this summer, and then they were out to comment from mid-September to mid-October, and then the faculty work group looked at the comments that we received and made any adjustments that they felt were necessary based on the comments. Different staff here at the coordinating board work with these groups, and I will call on the different liaisons who work with the groups to maybe just introduce and highlight anything of interest, or I hate to say the word controversy because there just wasn't any this year. It was a pretty quiet very good process, smooth running process. So I'll start with agriculture and ask Doug Jansen, if he will, to address the agriculture courses.
Thank you. Good morning. The Agriculture Learning Outcomes Group met in July, on July 18th, and developed 11 sets of course descriptions and learning outcomes. A draft of the course descriptions, as Rebecca said, was put out for public comment. We got one set of substantive comments back, and the work group agreed to incorporate those into the version that you see now.
I would point out that there is one course that is cross-listed in this group, and it's agriculture, horticulture, and it also carries that HORT.
Right.
So we'll do that the same. There wouldn't be another faculty group that could handle that one course. It's one course in horticulture.
I have a question about the AGRI 1309, Computers in Agriculture, and I realize the work group worked on this, but how is that? I mean, how is that course different from, if you look at the learning outcomes, there's agriculture mentioned, but why would that be different than another course that teaches them about word processing and spreadsheets?
My perception from the discussions that I overheard in the work group was that most of the community colleges especially use that heavy duty in agricultural applications. So using the word processing and the spreadsheets and all the skills they're learning in that agricultural setting. So to teach the skill sets that they need. Yeah, we could add that.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that the second and third learning outcome on Agriculture 1309 specifically mentions the word agriculture, and the first one doesn't, and that may be the why we have a question today.
Fair enough.
These, I will point out that these courses were chosen based on enrollments. So there are enrollments in this course, and it does have a strong transfer pattern. So it's found in bachelor degrees.
I'll just mention, if it makes, we actually teach this course at our college. I was not part of the work group, but we have a sustainable agriculture program, and it's a pretty agriculture-based course. And I understand why the work group would use this course. It's not a normal computer course. It's specific for agriculture.
And I'd like to add, my four-year institution agriculture program and animal science programs do accept it for transfer. And the course we offer on our campus is very specific in farm and ranch management software, beyond the word processing and spreadsheets.
And again, this may be a picky point, but the title of the course, Computers in Agriculture, should not be expanded. I mean, you're talking about software, you're talking about other things. It's not just a computer.
The work group didn't make that recommendation, and those are the faculty within that group.
Well, I'm willing to entertain a motion that we accept the proposed revisions of descriptions and learning outcomes for agriculture.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second
Okay,
it.
second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Motion carries. And that is to include the, I guess, the word in agriculture for that first learning outcome. It's a note I have. Clarification for me. Thank you. Okay, then
The next group is sorry. My mic wasn't on. These biology courses, which are next up, are for the field of study for nursing and maybe allied health. So they were not for science majors. And so we specifically recruited faculty who were teaching the courses for nurses. And Andrew Lofters worked with that faculty group, and he will speak to the descriptions and learning outcomes.
Hello, there we are. Good morning. The Biology Learning Outcome Work Group for the Field of Study and Nursing courses met on August 1st of this year. We reviewed the nutrition and diet therapy, anatomy and physiology 1 and anatomy and physiology 2, both the lecture and the lab and the combined course, and as well as microbiology for non-science majors, lecture, lab, and the combined course as well. The work group worked very well. We developed learning outcomes for all of the courses. They were then, as Rebecca mentioned, put out for public comment. We received comments, I wouldn't say from 8 entities or institutions regarding the learning outcomes, and out of those 8 submissions, we had suggestions for 15 changes overall. They were sent back to the learning outcomes work group to vote on whether or not they agreed on the change or not. The votes were brought back. The majority changes were instituted into the learning outcomes, and those are the learning outcomes that you have in front of you now.
Andrew, if I could ask, my biology faculty were some of the ones that sent some comments in. They were very concerned with the moving of the nervous system neurology from ANP2 into ANP1. Was there any, I assume that was not deemed as a major factor by the work group?
That was a major factor within the work group. That took a lot of discussion.
Okay.
And I believe the way they have it moved inside the learning outcomes now, that was an overall consensus of all the faculty in the room. We did have comments that came back that addressed that particular issue, but from the votes of the work group after the public comments were submitted back to them, they didn't think that the learning outcome should be changed at this time.
I promised my faculty I would bring this to, most of the time when you get into the nervous system in most of your textbooks, you're talking somewhere between 4 and 6 chapters. And that's probably some of the more difficult topics among the topics that are covered both in A&P 1 and A&P 2. Their fear, obviously, was that you take 5 chapters from what we have been teaching in A&P 2, move it to the end of A&P 1, and I understand the imbalance that currently exists between A&P 1 and A&P 2 topically. But a couple of comments that they made that they felt fairly strong about was that the fact that the topic was probably a little deeper and a little harder to grasp, integumentary, and then you go into the skeletal system, and then you go into the muscular system, and then as you get into the nervous system, they're looking at it from a very practical standpoint. The nervous system is what gets most of those students where the hang-up is. That's going to probably occur now after the drop date toward the end of the semester. And they're very concerned about student success and thought that probably student success would be higher, that we could move some other topics in to fill that gap as opposed to that nervous system, neurology type topics, and leave that really more difficult material for A&P 2. A lot of times those students that get into A&P 1, that's sometimes one of the first courses that are really, really challenging them. And, our students struggle with it. I mean, I think they're going to struggle more with it now if we move the nervous system from A&P 2 to A&P 1. I mean, I'm not going to throw a fit if that's the faculty and their expertise says that it needs to be in A&P 1, we'll do that. But I thought they had some valid comments and concerns regarding that particular topic moving from A&P 2 to A&P 1.
Well, again, I would entertain a motion to accept the proposed revisions of descriptions in learning outcomes for biology. Yeah.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In Rebecca, you'll know this. In the Acgm, there another set of courses of A&P that are designed for biology majors or science majors?
No, there's not another A&P for science majors. I believe that's probably taught at the upper division. If there is another A&P, that it's taught at the upper division. This one is specifically for nursing majors, nursing and allied health.
Well, so is A&P for science majors typically taught at the upper division level?
I can just speak for my institution, but A&P classes are at the 2000 level.
It's the same for my institution.
Well, that's what I thought, and so, but I'm wondering, but in the Acgm we only have. So, but you teach the same. I mean, we seem to be making a distinction for allied health and at the same time not making a distinction for allied health. Because if a student takes A&P and transfers to a 4-year institution, are they going to be required to take? I mean, they take A&P out of this, out of the Acgm, and they transfer to a 4-year institution. They're going to be required to take A&P again because this one's designed for allied health, and I don't know if there's a. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to figure out, because I don't know, is whether there is at least a dime's worth of difference between the two, or if there actually is no distinction made between anatomy and physiology for allied health, non-science majors and science majors.
At my institution, the nursing majors take the same course that the biologists and biochemists would take.
Okay, well, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
I think the distinction has been the microbiology class, not in the A&P class. The micro class requires chemistry, and it's a higher level course. A more complex course. Okay.
I did want to mention that the nutrition and diet therapy course is also cross-listed with HECO course with the same title.
So I hate to be the ignorant one, brand new to the committee, but in moving this content from one course to the other, are we risking a misalignment in transfer where a student runs the risk of not getting the nervous system in a transfer arrangement? You know, I mean, if they take A and P at one institution, one at one institution and two at the other institution, are we creating some challenges with the student getting the full set?
The reason we do the process is to bring universities and community colleges in, and our focus in the process is to align,
right,
to clarify the alignment. If it means that one or two institutions may have to adjust their own curriculum to meet the new learning outcomes, that's been an expectation, I think, all through the process. But our intent is to avoid that with the process of creating these learning outcomes and where topics are covered in each course.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion. So moved.
Okay, thank you. Second, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the proposed changes, the course descriptions and learning outcomes for the discipline of biology? Well, hearing none, I'll call a question. All in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Right.
Communications.
Yeah, Rebecca's going to address communications.
Yes, I work with that group, and we did have equal representation of universities and community college work on these. And during the comment period, we only had 5 comments, and in the case of one, the commenter wanted more learning outcomes and suggested 3, and the work group considered that an improvement, so they added some more learning outcomes, and that was to the audio production course. So they added additional learning outcomes based on a comment, and the others, they chose not to make changes based on those comments. They did most of them in all of the disciplines. It's usually wordsmithing that they would like it said a little differently, but the substance of the learning outcomes are not really changed. So there were very few comments for the work group to deal with in communications, limited to 5 comments.
Rebecca, could I ask a question about the learning outcomes for news reporting, COM 2315? And I understand that we're using broad learning outcomes, but in that course, as we currently teach it, we also have an expectation for students to become familiar with the Associated Press style manual. And I know that that's not part of the learning outcomes as stated, but that is one of the things that potential employers expect.
Actually, one of our work group members was from West Texas. So. I would like to point out that we did do some title changes, and we were trying to reflect what is currently being offered at schools, kind of update the titles. Media writing and news reporting were title changes.
I move that we accept the learner outcomes, course descriptions, and course titles for communication as presented.
We have a motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Do we have any further discussion? Well, hearing none, I'll call the question. And all in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. All right. The next discipline is education and TICA. We'll consider those together, and that is Jessica Acton. You have the floor.
Okay. The EDUC and TECA work group met on July 16th of this year. We developed outcomes for 6 of the 7 courses. During the public comment period, 28 comments were received, of which 16 were recommendations for change. The work group voted to adopt 14 of those changes, which you see reflected in the documentation in front of you. Those recommendations included minor wordsmithing to the course descriptions as well as learning outcomes. It also opted to combine a few of the learning outcomes, and it created one new learning outcome for EDUC 1301.
I have a simple question. Do the accrediting bodies for teacher education impact the learning outcomes that the work group came forward with? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
I would expect it to.
Is that also true because of the requirement of the accrediting agencies that the course descriptions are much longer than most of the other descriptions that we have seen? Because they include...
Yeah, I would say, but yeah, they include the titles of the organizations, so they're kind of lengthy.
Yeah, I agree there. Again, I would entertain a motion to accept the proposed revisions of descriptions and learning outcomes for EDUC and TECA.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have one question,
Okay.
and it's just a wordsmithing thing. Under Introduction to Special Populations, it has both EG and et cetera. That's more of just a grammatical English thing. I wasn't sure that was appropriate to have both.
Okay.
Which one?
EDUC 2301, the learning outcomes 1 and 2. In parentheses, it has EG and et cetera.
For example, and et cetera.
Oh, no. That was the group.
Do they want to have both? I didn't.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, my concern is grammatically, that's not something you see, and if this is an education course to teach our teachers,
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned.
Yeah.
But it's just a...
No, it does look like it should be one or the other. Yeah.
How about if we amend the motion to eliminate the et ceteras?
Okay.
Okay. We have a friendly amendment to eliminate the et ceteras on the learning outcomes for Education 2301. Any further discussion? Well, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Motion carries to approve the proposed revisions and descriptions for EDUC and TECA with the friendly amendment of deleting the two instances of et cetera for the learning outcomes on Education 2301. The next discipline is geography, and I want to turn it over to Alan. Mickey.
Right. Hello? Yes. Thank you. We had 4 courses to review. The committee, I thought, did an excellent job with them. The original course descriptions in the Acgm were pretty bare bones, and the committee was very familiar with the textbooks that are currently being used in the discipline. And they were very well informed on teaching trends and scholarship, and were able to update the course descriptions, provide much greater detail and much greater direction about the courses, and bring the course content in line with what's going on in the discipline and what teachers are likely to find in the popular textbooks in the discipline. We received 7 comments from 3 different institutions, none of which were substantive. All of them were stylistic, and the committee decided to adopt about half of them.
I would entertain a motion to accept the proposed revisions of descriptions and learning outcomes for geography. So, do we have a second? Second, okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor, please raise a hand. Any abstentions? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. That takes us now to the discipline of physical education, and we have Melinda Valdez here with us this morning.
Hello and good morning. So we met July 10th. We looked at 7 different courses, and we received 12 actionable comments, 9 of which were implemented into the final document that you have there in front of you today. And again, just a few comments. Minor wordsmithing really is all we received. No new outcomes recommended. No major content comments. And like I said, we received 12 actionable comments. We also received comments that didn't require any action, mostly along the lines of, hey, this looks good, we agree with you. So they were very pleased and happy with that outcome, of course.
I would like to mention that there's a Sociology 2340 that's cross-listed with the...
That's correct, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just a question, I may be wrong, but was there not a PHED 1364 at one time in the ACGM? Was that taken out? The 3-hour version of
I'm not
physical
sure.
fitness and sport? I mean, I don't see it listed.
So on page 27, and the work group wanted to change the title, but they did create learning outcomes for it. So it will remain as a 1-hour course in the
3-hour course is gone.
Is that
38 and 1301. 1301 was what it was crossed to list, and they created learning outcomes for the 1301 as well, which is so that they're different courses. You know, you're teaching different things because one's a 1 hour and one's a 3 hour. Kind of the focus and the audience for the courses was updated.
Thank you.
Yes.
These same changes would apply to the KINE rubric as well?
Yes. Yes.
And I know I've mentioned this before when we were looking at the courses in the Acgm, but having PhDs cross-listed with SOCI just always seems to run into SACS issues. I know.
You know, I looked at that, and the SIP is for health, and so we kind of left it there, and the sociology work group that met just a few years ago did not choose this particular course to update or change. So we didn't get any comment about it. So we kind of left it as is. But if you want to drop the cross listing and drop the learning outcomes from the sociology course, we can do it as well.
I think, if I may, when you have it in sociology, it's really not taught as a health course. It's looked at from a sociological problem, and they really are two distinct courses. I'm not sure that having these two in particular cross-linked or cross-listed is the best thing.
I'd be more comfortable dropping the cross-listing for a number of reasons.
I was going to check the enrollments, if that might be, an explanation for.
I wanted to ask about 1304. The title says personal/community health, but in the description says personal and/or community health. So does that mean that either one could be taught, even though the title suggests both?
That's correct. That was part of the comments, asking to do the slash there or the other combination that you discussed. So it really leaned more towards how you see that final document there, changing the title, having the title have the slash and the description inside with the other combination, as opposed to reversed or making it uniform throughout.
Okay, I'm checking the enrollments on the drug abuse, use and abuse. It is taught at 13 community colleges, a PhD, and it transfers to 4 universities, the PhD course. Then when we look at what's reported for the sociology course, 10 community colleges teach it as a sociology course, but no universities have. For 2 years, in 1 year they did. And 1 university taught it as a sociology course. So it seems like the pattern, the more preferred pattern is as a PhD course.
But if it were taught as a sociology course one place, then transferred to another place where it'd be a physical education course, it'd be a different content, it would seem. It wouldn't really be the same at all.
So that this committee can make that recommendation that it not be cross-listed and the learning outcomes not be added to the sociology. That's your prerogative. Yeah.
I would like to make that recommendation, that they not be cross-listed.
Okay, we have a second? Okay. Plenty of seconds, okay. Yeah, I'll consider that. Well, I would be happy to entertain a motion that we accept the proposed revisions of descriptions and learning outcomes to physical education with the friendly amendment that has been seconded to drop the cross-listing of sociology 2304 and the associated learning outcomes. 2340 and the associated learning outcomes with the sociology course.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? And a second. All right.
Made the second. Okay.
Wally did. All right. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. All right, that completes agenda item 6. If you would, pull agenda item 7 out of your packet. These are some other recommendations that came out of the Learning Outcome Project faculty work groups. They are essentially deletions because there's not enough room in current degree plans to have 2 courses in the agricultural areas. And the Education 1325 deletion is primarily because it's only taught at one university, and if you understand the Acgm, 5 universities have to accept the course, not just in transfer, but to apply to a degree plan. And right now there's essentially, I know I used the word taught, there's one university that I'm aware of that's actually accepting it for a degree plan.
In the case of the 2 agricultural courses, they actually developed the learning outcomes and felt that, by developing the learning outcomes for a single course, instead of, letting students stack up too many hours in that particular topic, was a better plan to protect students. And the same with the livestock evaluation.
If we drop the agricultural construction too, then obviously the title, okay.
And if you'll note, the committee in previous action had already deleted the others because of lack of enrollments. This further clarifies the direction.
I move we accept the recommendations of the agriculture faculty group with respect to the deletion of these 2 courses.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to consider the recommendations to delete the Agriculture 2304 and 2322 from the Acgm. Any further discussion?
If we delete the courses, is that automatically going to bring about the name change so that the 1 gets dropped in everything that we just approved? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll have to go back.
Yeah, no, we don't need another work group in the spring for that. So, any further discussion? Okay, well, hearing none, I'm willing to entertain a motion. Oh, wait, we already have a motion. Sorry. Sorry. Then I'll call the question. All in favor, raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, seeing none, the motion carries on the recommendations to delete the 2 Agriculture 2304 and 2322, and then we'll be striking the Roman numeral 1s on the existing course titles. This takes us to the Education 1325 course. Do we have a second? And we have a motion and a second that we delete Education 1325 from the ACGM. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Seeing none, the motion carries. All right. This takes us to agenda item 8. And those of you that were present for the spring ACGM meeting, remember the half-day session we did in work groups to review courses in the ACGM in terms of enrollments, number of two-year colleges that were offering them, and number of four-year institutions that were accepting them for not just transfer but also applying them to a degree plan. A question came out of that project from the spring meeting as to what the ACGM means by a recommended co-requisite, or what does ACGM mean by a recommended prerequisite? So it's really the word recommended, which is italicized in your agenda item 8, that is the issue here. And this could be something that we could establish a subcommittee here today with, and let that subcommittee work with Rebecca Leslie and James Gilmon between now and the spring meeting to do research, and then bring a recommendation to the ACGM at the spring meeting to act on.
This was included because we have received inquiries. Institutions don't know, is this something they need to include in their catalog, or can they completely ignore it? And when you start looking at where that wording is used, where recommended is used, sometimes it indicates that it's just a scheduling preference. It provides for the split of a lab and a lecture as opposed to a 4-hour class. And they'll say the lab is recommended to be taken with the lecture. In other cases, it addresses student preparation, which is completely a different issue. And so it's not clear what institutions should do, especially as a student preparation issue. Is this something they can leave out of their catalogs? Do they have to address it at all? Or what was the intent when it was put in as a recommended? And so we want to be clear with the institutions, and we want to give them the guidance. And so like input from the committee as well when we kind of explore this issue so that we can communicate to the institutions. Being from the sciences, one issue we see at the four-year institutions is that, say they had an optional or recommended lab at the two-year college, and then they come to the four-year, and we have that as a biology 14-something, so it's a combined lecture lab course, and so the student ends up, repeating a lecture again, and that's a real disservice in that situation. So, and then the examples that Rebecca's provided in this agenda item 8, this is not
all of them that are in the ACGM. Okay, it's just a sample, which is why I'm recommending that we put together a subcommittee to work on these. And it would be nice for that subcommittee to be, multidisciplinary.
Do you want a motion to put together the subcommittee, or?
Are you volunteering?
I'll volunteer to do that, sure.
Okay.
That's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think on this item we actually need a motion, but I do think we need a volunteer. So Michael Indy will chair the subcommittee. No. And then Sandra and Edgar.
We need representation from universities as well.
Yes.
Or the bulk of these in the sciences? What?
One is accounting. Most of them are in the sciences.
Most of them are lab-related kinds of
yes.
situations.
But some of the more problematic ones are not in science.
Yeah.
So I would say that the accounting one has been problematic, as well as where it's recommended a math course for a science course, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So there could be in both kinds of disciplines, and we need to hear from universities as well as community colleges.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm rather a newbie, but I don't mind participating.
Okay, thanks, Ucia. I think one more four-year institution member of the subcommittee would be appropriate. Okay. Wally, great, thank you. Okay. And then I will volunteer Rebecca Leslie and then James Gomon as he has time to also help out with the research piece of getting you all some documentation between now and the spring meeting so you can decide what you want to do and then bring recommendations forward at the spring meeting if they're available at that time. This does get us up to agenda item 9, which is lunch. We could continue on with another item or two.
Another 10 minutes?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then, if it's going to take about 10 minutes to get lunch set up, why don't we go ahead and take a break for 10 minutes? Some of you may need a restroom. And yeah,
for lunch.
Yeah, and then, so we'll adjourn for lunch and take a 10-minute break and then lunch, and then we'll reconvene after lunch to start with agenda item 10.
Okay.
We'll welcome back from the lunch break. I'd like to reconvene the Academic Course Guide Manual Advisory Committee. To continue on with the rest of our business for today, we will begin with agenda item 10, which is an update on institutions reporting ACGM and TCCNS equivalents, and I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca.
Okay. For those of you who were here at our spring meeting, one of our challenges was when we were looking at enrollments, we found that some universities did not report a 3-hour course. With a 3-hour course, they might report a 3-hour course is equivalent to a 4-hour or a 5-hour. So it made it where we had to double check the data to identify the real transfer pathways that were actually out there in the field. And the concern was that this made our work harder, and could we have more accuracy in those reporting. So I took the issue to the data collection committee here and recommended some clarifying language in the reporting manuals for universities and also as backup for this, in the statute it says that they are to report what they offer, not what you want to communicate as transfer, what you're going to accept in transfer, but what you actually offer. So since that's in the statute, that we need to know what you're offering, and the specificity of the Texas Common Course numbering system indicates our value. So that if it's a 3-hour course, you need to match it with a 3-hour course. So the language and what's in this agenda item is just indicating the clarification that's in the reporting manual now, based on your recommendation that be clarified, and that we try to maybe raise the consciousness of universities when they're doing these reports. I think from my conversations with the data collection people here at the coordinating board is that these may have been pre-populated and there's not a systematic review at the universities, and maybe there should be. Maybe this change will encourage that, and that field will be closely looked at, and they'll have clarification of what to do. And next year, and I assume that we will continue our process of since that is the charge of the committee, to look at enrollments of where courses are offered and how frequently they're offered, and statewide enrollments, that we will go forward with that improvement and raise the consciousness, like I said, of the universities to be more conscientious and aware of the impact. And this issue becomes more critical as the associate's degrees are compressed to 60 hours, and as bachelor's degrees are compressed to 120. So where there's a difference between the same course being offered as 3 hours and 5 hours, the student's going to come with 2 extra hours, and that needs to be clarified. And we need to be able to identify what is the preferred pathway or the preferred offering of a certain course. So that's all that refers to, and that's just for your information, and we'll continue to follow up with that so that in the spring, when we look at those enrollments, we'll be conscious and be looking for that.
All right, thank you. In your packet, agenda item 11, right, about an appeal process for courses deleted from the Acgm. This is another consequence of the half-day work group sessions that were done at the spring 2014 meeting, as that we did have some courses that were deleted from the Acgm, and as you would expect, some institutions would call Rebecca and say, how do I get my class back in? I need this course, all right? There were 5 total inquiries. You remember the process is that, to get a course into the Acgm, is that 5 two-year institutions have to agree to offer it. And then in addition to that, 5 four-year institutions have to agree to apply it to a degree plan. All right, and that's what's stated in there. Now, of the 5 inquiries, none of the 5 have come forward to this body with any kind of a formal appeal. I'll remind you, if you want to do a control find, F for find in the Acgm, the word appeal does not appear once. There's not even one instance of it. So Rebecca may want to add to this, but for informational purposes for this committee and to get it into our webcast today, the procedure should be, when someone asks about an appeal process, is the process is to follow the process to get into the Acgm. 5 two-year institutions willing to offer it, and 5 four-year institutions willing to apply it to a degree plan, and then bring that documentation to this committee, and then this body would then move on it.
I would say that as you look at the material in your packet, I do have our web page and the web address, and the forms are located on the bottom left, and so they can download those forms. Because these are appeals of existing courses, they probably wouldn't need to go through TCC&S because the numbers already exist. but they will use the same forms that they would for getting a new course in here, and those are available. And the committee, when they were deleting the courses, we were using a standard of criteria for deletion, and the same standard is going to apply if they want to get it back in there. If they can substantiate that our decision was based on, that there's more information out there than what we are aware, they would have to bring that forward to us.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 12, which is the report from the TCCNS coordinator, who could not attend the meeting today, but we're fortunate to have Suzanne Carter, who is the chair of the TCCNS board, and she's from Tarrant County. Thank you. Could I ask you to turn your microphone? Thank you.
Now can you hear me? At our meeting in July of this year, the board authorized us to search out and contract with a new site to house the Common Course Number website. We then called on a couple of retired folks from TACRO who've been active in that kind of field, and one of them is Dave Stones, who was previously with UT Austin, and then was for 10 or so years the registrar at Southwestern University, and Gene Stewart, who was the registrar at University of Texas at Dallas, for many years, to help us seek out a new location. And we have accomplished that, and we have had our proposal accepted by the University of Texas at Austin. And so we are now in the process of transitioning the website from its previous site at UT Pan American to the University of Texas server. We're excited about that prospect. We feel like this is going to give us a lot of stability in the website, but it's also going to allow us to make some enhancements to the information that is already out there. And I'll tell you what the three enhancements that we've already discussed with them are. One of them ties into Rebecca's previous discussion about the designation of a TCCNS course versus a transfer equivalence. We've had people that have filled out their matrices on the website and indicated that they're teaching a Common Course number, but what they really meant by that was that we're not teaching this course, but if we see it on your transcript, this is how we'll accept it. So we felt like that there was enough instance of that we wanted to enhance the information on the website and allow people to designate whether it is a Common Course number or whether it is a transfer equivalence. So we are going to have that added to the information on each institution's matrix for their courses. We are going to move to an annual update of the coursework so that it follows institutions' catalogs. We will still continue to archive that information each catalog year, so students who have attended previously or advisors who want to use the website to determine information from a transfer transcript can see past courses as well as current courses. Another enhancement that we want to make, and this kind of came out of discussion at the TACRO meeting last week, the Common Course, the Common Core, was discussed at length, and we felt like that a lot of folks were having trouble figuring out what course satisfied what component at what institution. So we are going to add the capability of a designation if one of the courses on your list is fulfilling a core requirement, you can tell us what that is by adding that code to that course. So that, and then that information, of course, would be available for transfer advisors. The third thing that we have identified as a need, and this will probably be the last enhancement that comes around because it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but we were asked, the TCC&S board was asked 2 years ago by TACRO to move to trying to standardize the course numbers that are being used for developmental education. So our board members divided up all the regions and did a study from everybody's catalogs, and we had spreadsheets made up to show, and the result was that is just a nightmare. And trying to get it standardized, that's a wonderful idea, but it is probably an impossible task. So what we talked about doing was allowing each institution to add the courses that they are using for developmental education to their course list, not as a common course number, but just record by level rather than by specific course number. So if this is your first level of developmental education mathematics, you can say this is the course we're using. And we would ask them to designate each level and then to designate their exit level so that when you get a transcript, you can easily look up and see they took this math course. That means they are at this level and ready to go into the next level, or they have passed it and they are now college ready. So we're going to work on that. That's going to take a little longer, but we feel like that's information that would be very valuable and helping students transfer and helping the transfer advisors read transcripts and know how to advise students in placement of developmental education. So we're going to be very busy for the next few months, but we're excited to be that busy and getting this done. Our next meeting will be in late March, and we anticipate that the transition will be final, and at least the first two enhancements will probably be made, and we'll be ready to work on the developmental education. So, thank you. Any questions?
As far as developmental courses are concerned, is there any consistency across the state as to whether they're graded or just given credit?
No, we didn't find that there was any consistency. Many institutions just use a pass-fail, and then some use ABC, DF, some count it in the GPA, and some do not. The only consistency that we found was that nobody is using it for degree credit because they're not supposed to. But the method of grading, the course numbering, the sequence, some people have 3 or 4 different levels, some only have 1, some have 2. So there was a lot more discrepancy than we even realized. That's why we decided that it probably was not going to be possible to get everyone to use the same course numbers. But if we could just get that designation so that you could easily tell what level that course represented, that would at least help the student in transfer.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. Agenda item 13 is my update to this committee about the report we gave. We, as in Dr. Sharon Blackman and I, presented to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success June 2014. You have it with you there. We basically reported on what the Acgm Advisory Committee did at the fall and spring meetings. The learning outcomes we looked at, the work groups, with the course enrollment review of the Acgm at the spring meeting. Sharon and I received 2 questions. One was, how often does the Acgm Advisory Committee review course enrollments? The answer is we're supposed to do it annually, but the context to that was that we haven't done it for quite some time, so last spring was one of the first large looks at it, and that's why there were quite a few courses recommended for deletion or for further study. The second question was, give me an example of a student learning outcome, and it came from a member new to the committee, but there were two questions that Sharon and I could easily answer, and the report from our committee was accepted by cause, and we're to the point to where we're at today. Add anything?
I just want to add that this was the first time we had been required to do this. This was new in our rules that advisory committees report on a yearly basis, and this was the first time that the Acgm had actually reported to the board. And so it was a learning exercise for us as well. I think we will try to maybe present more background, more of a context for what this committee does, because I think this committee is very important, and your work really is important to the students of Texas in transfer. So we are looking at maybe giving more of a context and background information of what the Acgm is, its development for the next meeting, so that maybe just let the coordinating board members know more of what valuable service you provide.
Okay, so that gets us through agenda item 13. We're now to 14 on our agenda, which is future agenda items and our next meeting date. Hearing that TCCNS is probably going to be late March, it seems logical for this group to probably reconvene in April. Yeah, after their meeting, because they'll be reporting to us again. As far as agenda items, the ones that I'm aware of is that we will continue the annual review of the Acgm at the spring meeting. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca, but I don't think we're going to have as many courses to look at as we did last spring. But and so we need to look at those course enrollments. Now remember, to get into the Acgm, you have to have 5 two-year colleges indicate through a letter that they offer the course. When 3 or fewer two-year colleges, but actually I think the threshold's 3, right? 3 or fewer two-year colleges are offering the course, we must review it. We must look at the course enrollments. We look at how many four-year institutions are accepting it, to apply to a degree plan, and then make a recommendation for deletion or just staying in place in the Acgm. The other item that came up earlier prior to lunch break was about the subcommittee to work with Rebecca Leslie and James Gomon and the rest of the staff in that area on what does the Acgm mean with the word recommended co-requisite or recommended prerequisite. So you're aware of anything else that... Okay, yeah. So I know that those will at least be 2 of the agenda items for the spring meeting. And we may have some other reports from some other areas besides TCCNS, but we'll let you know.
And as usual, I'll probably clear dates with our 2 chairs based on their availability, and then send out a poll to make sure that we'll have a quorum. So it'll be sometime last week in March, first couple of weeks. We'll look at where spring break falls too, but it'll be last week in March, maybe first or second week in April.
Well, I'm willing to entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, sure.
And I don't have a whole new discussion, but are there any rules? That each individual.
There is I don't think it's in rules, but I mean, there's a fraction or a 0.66.
The problem is that we have that come in and we have students who have, for the core, a 2 point something, something, something for English.
Like if they come in and the translation awards them 2.66,
Yeah.
I think that's within the purview of the institution and how to deal with that. Yeah. In the best interest. Yes.
Okay.
Has this committee ever offer having go through all those issues now, separate them now, just like me.
Yes.
Well, a few years ago, they had both sequences in the Acgm, and the committee voted to remove all the integrated one, and so that now you have the separate. So community colleges will just be offering that single sequence. And there is a 1-hour course available, and you can find it online if it's not offered at your institution, so that it can help those students take just 7 hours as opposed to taking 9 hours to get the right content covered in those courses, because that content is legislatively mandated. So it has been addressed as best we can. That 1-hour course, direct your students to that, and then curriculum changes at the university level to come on board with the community college may be an option too.
Yes.
So
yes.
It has been addressed.
Right. Yes. Right. Correct.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Sure. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, we'll add that to it. Okay. Well, a motion to adjourn doesn't need a second. It needs the chair's acceptance, and I accept it. So thank you for your time. Everybody have a safe drive back to your campuses, and we'll see you in the spring.